Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com, as well as the YouTube channel and NoDQ&A videos affiliate, ringsidenews.com. We have Hell in a Cell this coming Sunday. NoDQ.com will have you covered this weekend. Make sure you stay tuned to NoDQ for the very latest. Got your questions now from twitter.com/AaronRift. First one today comes from Andrew. Do you see Randy Orton possibly joining the Wyatts as a similar work to when Bryan did it? A lot of people are wondering what is going on with Randy Orton. WWE pulling a little bit of a twist with this storyline. Randy Orton coming out and instead of helping Kane, he hit Kane with the RKO. Was this a heel turn, or was this something similar to when Daniel Bryan joined the Wyatts and then turned on them? The whole line where Randy Orton backstage said, if you cannot beat them, join them, that seems to indicate a storyline where Randy Orton is acting like he's going to be affiliated with Bray Wyatt, but then possibly turns on Wyatt. You would think if Orton was going to actually turn heel that he would not be paired up with Bray Wyatt and Luke Harper. So the whole thing is a little strange. And I got this question from Brett. Is it a little obvious that Randy Orton is playing mind games with Bray Wyatt? I don't see him with the Wyatts. That's exactly how I feel about it. The fact that Orton said that line, if you cannot beat them, join them, that seems to indicate that there's going to be a storyline with Orton playing mind games on Bray Wyatt and Luke Harper. That's how it came across to me. Now, I know Orton has been vocal about preferring to be a heel, and I think in the long run, he is better off as a heel, but there's also been the talk about Randy Orton versus AJ Styles. Now, I would rather see a heel Randy Orton versus a babyface AJ Styles, and I'll get to AJ and Dean Ambrose and that whole situation. It's really interesting because I think Smackdown needs a really strong heel, and even though AJ Styles is a heel right now, I feel like he gets far more cheers than boos. Now, maybe the same thing would happen with Orton. Even if he went full-fledged heel, he would still get cheered. It's a really interesting situation. I'll give WWE credit for this storyline. It's definitely got people wondering what's going to happen now with Randy Orton. It's an interesting twist. I like what they've done with Orton laying out Kane. It's something we were not expecting, and I'm curious now to see what the follow-up is with this. And you know, while I'm talking about this whole Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt thing, you know, I think Bray Wyatt's better off as a babyface as well. I think that Bray Wyatt and AJ Styles would be better off as babyfaces, and I think Orton and Dean Ambrose would be better off as heels. And that's my little lead-in to this next question here from Elias. Hey Aaron, do you think WWE missed the chance to turn Dean Ambrose heel by not having him attack Ellsworth after he cost him the title opportunity? Too soon to do that. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity to turn Dean Ambrose, but I would not pull the trigger on that right away. I would let that gradually build and let the story play out over the next several weeks where Ellsworth just gets more and more under the skin of Dean Ambrose, and finally Ambrose snaps. I think this would be a fantastic way to turn Dean Ambrose heel. I thought it was an awesome segment on Smackdown, by the way. I thought it was great having Ellsworth. He's so sick of AJ beating him up during the match that he gets into the zone, he hulks up, he super kicks AJ in the heat of the moment, and then realizes he's screwed over his buddy Dean Ambrose after Ambrose had turned down the idea of Ellsworth being there at ringside. You know, Ellsworth is like this sad puppy, and Ambrose cannot help himself, and now he gets screwed over. And again, Ellsworth is like this sad puppy. He's crying at the end of SmackDown. I thought it was so well done, and I think if WWE played their cards right and told this story the right way, you would have a perfect opportunity to turn Ambrose heel and even do a double turn. Maybe have AJ come to the aid of Ellsworth, and that's how you turn AJ babyface. And I got this question here from Pinello14. With Dean losing tonight, who does AJ fight for the title, and do you think Dean will turn heel after last night? I hope Dean turns heel. As far as who AJ fights for the title, again, I mean, you could have Randy Orton versus AJ, which seemed to be the plan at one point, and it seems inevitable that they'll face. But again, I think AJ as a babyface and Randy Orton as a heel is more compelling, and I'd rather see that. So it just depends. I mean, WWE's in a weird spot because you do not want to turn all these guys in a very short period of time. It's a matter of gradually turning these guys and letting the characters evolve with the storyline. So you do not want to just suddenly turn Ambrose, turn Orton, turn Bray Wyatt, turn AJ. You know, I think by WrestleMania, it would be nice to see the roles reversed, where AJ is a babyface and Bray Wyatt's a babyface, and you have Dean Ambrose as a heel, and you have Randy Orton as a heel. I think that should be the long-term goal, but again, you do not want to do that. You do not want to do that in a very short period of time. Now, I think as far as potential challengers for AJ, you also have Survivor Series coming up, so it's not like WWE has to come up with something immediately. You could put AJ as the captain of the Smackdown team against the Raw team. You can do that and just wait a little bit before coming up with the next opponent. And for all we know, it could end up being John Cena facing AJ Styles again. I think that's a mistake. I think AJ should turn face and move on, or even turn John Cena heel. I mean, I just think AJ's better off as a face. I mean, I really do. This one comes from RPA Brand. Hi Aaron, I have to ask you, considering what Ellsworth made on SmackDown Live, do you see a triple threat angle? I know it sounds funny. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be more of this storyline between Ambrose and Ellsworth, and you're going to have this friction. I really think it would be best for business to turn Dean Ambrose heel as the end result of this storyline with James Ellsworth. I know I've been saying for the longest time about Ambrose turning heel, so they could end up doing a triple threat or something like that with the three of them, and then Ellsworth has to choose a side. That might be an interesting dynamic. I mean, that's how you know this is a good storyline, because there's a lot of different ways WWE can go with it, and time will tell if they do the triple threat or they come up with something else. But it's hard to imagine that the same company that's responsible for Raw is responsible for producing awesome content on SmackDown. Like I said, I think the heels and faces need to be switched up on SmackDown. But other than that, I mean, SmackDown's been a very enjoyable show every week, and definitely better than Raw consistently. And speaking of the Raw versus SmackDown discussion, this one comes from Sohail TV. SmackDown consistently produces better content than Raw, but how come SmackDown is still drawing low ratings? The problem is that WWE right now is not really a very hot product. Yes, they are profitable still, and the ratings are still decent, but it's not at the popularity level that it's been in recent years and in other eras in history. WWE is somewhat cold right now, and the fact is, Raw is still the A show. I mean, no matter how good SmackDown is, Raw is still the show that people will tune in first and foremost. If they're going to watch any wrestling at all, they're going to tune into Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw has been the established show now for 25 plus years, almost 25 years. Monday Night Raw is the flagship, and I think it would take at least a solid year of SmackDown being the better show to really even come close to Raw's numbers, and for Raw to really sink to a new low. SmackDown's ratings have been up since SmackDown went live and the brand extension started. SmackDown has seen a bump in ratings. Not a huge bump, but the viewership has increased. But it's still nothing compared to Raw, and I doubt it's ever really going to become close on a regular basis. And let's face it, if somebody gets really hot on SmackDown, if an act really catches fire on SmackDown, there's a very good chance they're going to get drafted to Raw, because WWE considers Raw to be the A show. So it's going to be really difficult for SmackDown to ever get to Raw's level in terms of overall popularity. Got this one here from Marcus. Which women's division is better, SmackDown or Raw? I'm surprised to say SmackDown entertains me more with less star power. I think I would agree with you. I feel that part of the problem is Raw just being 3 hours, and it feels like the women's segments often drag out on Raw, and on SmackDown it's faster paced, and I feel that on SmackDown you get to the point. With Raw, it just feels like the segments go longer than they need to, and there's more rambling, during the promos. I thought on Raw, that segment went too long and just wasn't a fan of it. And I haven't really been a fan of the build-up between Charlotte and Sasha. Obviously just putting them in Hell in a Cell is a big deal, but I would have liked to have seen a better storyline leading up to it rather than just, hey, there's a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, we're going to make history and put the two of them in a cell match, I would have rather they did something to the point where Mick Foley and Stephanie would say, hey, we need to settle this between the two of them and let's put them in Hell in a Cell, rather than just say, hey, we're going to make history and put them in Hell in a Cell. Smackdown, it just gets more to the point, and yeah, the storylines have been entertaining for the most part. This one comes from Donald Long. Does it seem that on TV in recent weeks that the WWE Raw Women's Championship has become the biggest title in the company? I think that because that match has been promoted to Hell in a Cell and it's being billed as one of the main events, that some people would consider that. And of course, the women's title has more prestige than the Universal title because it's been around a lot longer. The Universal title is a brand new title, and not just the women's division, but I would also say the storyline between Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens has been relatively flat. I haven't been a big fan of Seth Rollins as a babyface. The best stuff in that entire feud, in my opinion, has been Jericho. Him doing the whole list of Jericho, and his involvement has made the storyline very entertaining when Jericho's involved. But I haven't really been a big fan of the Universal title storyline, so that could be the problem as well. That the Raw Women's title has been more intriguing than the Universal title. Although I'm saying that's not a huge accomplishment at this point. I would say pretty much all the title programs on SmackDown have been better than the stuff on Raw. Just because in general, SmackDown, it's been easier to watch. And part of that's because SmackDown's a shorter show. Next one comes from The Loneliest Monk. How much is shoot with Triple H, Shane, and Stephanie making creative decisions? I feel Vince silently let the authority for some time. Vince is still in control. At the end of the day, he still makes the final decision, and that will continue until he either retires or dies, and I doubt he's going to retire. Stephanie and Triple H definitely have their influence, but Vince is the one that will make the final decision. He makes the final approval of what gets put on television. And you can tell that the Triple H is definitely gaining influence. I mean, the fact that Kevin Owens is getting a Universal title run and is one of the headliners, I mean, I think that's Triple H more than anything else. I definitely feel that's more Triple H than Vince. If it was all Vince's decision, I don't think we would see Kevin Owens in this position and possibly even in the company. I mean, we've heard the stories about how Vince felt about Samoa Joe. Bruce Pritchard said that Vince did not want to hire Joe because Joe doesn't have the right look, and Joe's getting the opportunity now and will most likely be on the main roster, and I think a lot of that will be due to Triple H and not Vince. So there's no doubt that Triple H is gaining some political stroke, but it's still Vince's decision at the end of the day, and I guess maybe Triple H is good at convincing Vince what is best for business. This one comes from Jeremiah Dorset. Do you think WWE and TNA misused Scott Steiner? I say his WCW heel run from late 99 through early 2001 was better. Your thoughts? I talked about Scott Steiner on a recent video when I was asked about Goldberg's streak, and I think if WCW had played their cards right, and if they had done with Scott Steiner what they did in late 2000, if they had done that before WCW business collapsed, I think Steiner could have been a really big deal. And possibly he would have been the guy to end the streak at Starrcade or even early 99. And Scott Steiner could have been established as the top heel. If WCW had phased out Hogan and Savage and Piper before business collapsed and pushed Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner, and more importantly, pushed guys like Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho, and maybe Benoit could have been Scott Steiner, then you could have built up some new superstars and maybe WCW would have survived and the entire wrestling industry today would have been very different, but wasn't meant to be. This one comes from Paul. How would you have booked a Stone Cold versus CM Punk Dream WrestleMania match, and who would do the job? Well, I would definitely make CM Punk the heel. I mean, Steve Austin coming back, he's going to be the babyface, and ultimately I would have Steve Austin go over CM Punk. But, you know, if they had done that match in 2012, I think it would have been more difficult because of CM Punk's popularity. I think in 2013, after that CM Punk heel run, they could have done it. WrestleMania 29 in New York, Steve Austin versus CM Punk after CM Punk had that record-breaking WWE title run. I think that would have been an excellent opportunity to do that match. And again, I would have had Steve Austin go over. I mean, Steve Austin, if he's coming out of retirement, should win his comeback match for that feel-good moment. This one comes from Braden. If not Punk, who would you like to have seen beat Jeff Hardy for the title at SummerSlam in 2009? I had no problem with Punk beating Jeff Hardy. I think CM Punk was absolutely the right guy to beat Jeff Hardy at that time. I think the problem was the follow-up and how CM Punk lost to The Undertaker right away, and WWE basically erased the momentum that they had built up with CM Punk by beating Jeff Hardy, and not only that, but ending Jeff Hardy's WWE career. And I remember CM Punk coming out dressed up like Jeff Hardy. WWE had CM Punk as a top heel at that point, and then they kind of took a step back by having Punk lose to The Undertaker right away. That was definitely a mistake. Looking back, I mean, CM Punk should have continued to have been the top heel, and instead he lost, went to doing the Straight Edge Society and kind of fizzled out for a while, and then eventually did the pipe bomb, and everything really took off. This one comes from Beast Slayer. Sasha Banks wants to be the Beyonce of WWE. She's good, but becoming cocky way too early in her career. Your thoughts? That was a really interesting comment. I mean, the thing about Beyonce is I think people either really love her or really hate her. And I'm not a fan of her music, but I know a lot of people think she's terrible and overrated, and a lot of people think she's the best thing since sliced bread. So it was really interesting when Sasha made that comment, because I think nobody was happy with the comment. I think people were either pissed off that she had the audacity to compare herself to the great Beyonce, and then there were other people saying, why would Sasha compare herself to somebody who's so overrated and bad and all that stuff? I found it to be really fascinating, the reaction to that comment from Sasha Banks. Maybe it wasn't the smartest thing for her to say. I feel like she's getting a little bit of backlash from some people. I mean, her promos haven't been great, and I think part of that is I think she's just better as a heel, and she comes off as a little bit cocky and arrogant when she does her promos. You know, I kind of get like an old Bret Hart vibe from her. I remember as a kid not liking Bret Hart a lot because I always felt he was just a little bit too cocky. You know, it's good to have the self-confidence and all that, but sometimes when a person brags about how good they are too often, it crosses that line into being arrogant and cocky. And that's how I felt about Bret Hart growing up. And I kind of feel that way about Sasha Banks' character. I feel like, you know, she's just too full of herself a little bit, and I feel she would be better as a heel. So I'm hoping WWE will eventually move in that direction of turning her and doing Sasha versus Bayley. I mean, Bayley's just so likable. I mean, Bayley is like the complete opposite of Sasha, very humble and doesn't brag about how great she is. And, I think that's a very natural program for WrestleMania, with Sasha as a heel defending the title against Bayley and Bayley winning it at WrestleMania. That'll wrap it up for this edition of NoDQ&A video. Thanks as always for watching. Again, NoDQ.com is your source for everything related to Hell in a Cell. I will be doing the live play-by-play coverage on the website, as well as posting the tweets on Twitter.com. Stay tuned for all that, and I will see you guys next time.